Welcome to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode we're going to be learning about native Missouri grassland. And before we start, I want to look at a brief movie that Bill Crackler did.
Have you ever wondered what your neighborhood looked like before there were streets, houses, people? In Missouri, much of the land was forested or open prairie. Imagine the tall grass swaying in the breeze, bison and turkey searching for food. In St. Louis, Missouri, you can visit a small prairie remnant within city limits. Ironically, this bastion of prairie life is in a cemetery, Calvary Cemetery in North St. Louis. What happened to all the prairie? Agriculture, cultivation, urban landscapes, concrete, cemeteries. Despite being mostly grass-covered, the root beds of prairies are very deep. A sea of grass and wildflowers, prairie is less than 10% tree cover. In Missouri, there's always a struggle between forest and prairie. Naturally, fire replenishes the prairie every 3 to 5 years by removing invasive plants and slow-growing tree starts. We can restore existing prairie by removing trees and brush. Cultivated land can be reconstructed to prairie by removing brush and trees, then replanting with native plant species.
Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz, and I have a couple of guests with me today that really have a lot of experience with prairie restoration. I have Jay Fish, who is with Campus Honors Environmental Research Program. Jay, it's great to have you.
Good to be here.
And now the abbreviation for that is CHIRP, right?
Right.
And that's at University of Missouri St. Louis?
Yes, and it's a program in the Honors College up there.
Oh, great. And so are there students involved in the program?
Yes, there are. It's urban ecology classes for undergraduate students who are not science majors, and it's a chance to have them get out into wild lands and, in fact, be involved in recreating prairies on campus and other natural landscaping.
Fantastic. And we also have John Wingo. John, you're with the Missouri Prairie Foundation. Do I have that right?
That's correct.
And now tell me, what is the Missouri Prairie Foundation?
The Missouri Prairie Foundation is a not-for-profit, and we acquire and preserve native prairie remnants around the state, as well as acquiring lands that buffer these prairies to protect some of the original prairie that was occupying the state for purposes of research and study.
Okay, well, let me ask both of y'all this. We can talk about prairie restoration and prairie reconstruction. What's the difference between those?
I think prairie restoration is going back to a particular historical landscape.
Okay.
But usually when people use prairie restoration, there's elements of that landscape still there.
Okay.
So an example might be an old railroad right-of-way where the plants have always been there. They've maintained there throughout the times. It's been a forgotten place. You might then use that as the basis to restore the prairie into a field or into a larger area. Here in the urban area, such as on the University of Missouri St. Louis campus, it was leveled 2 centuries ago for pasture. And there's not any native prairie plants left. There's the occasional large mature oak tree. But there we're doing prairie reconstruction, because although on many of the lands we deal with there are good native soils, Menfro silt loam, in other areas it's urban soils, soils that have been compacted with material or have been built upon. And so
and that's gone on for centuries.
Right, and it's gone on for, our area was settled in about 1815 by the Lucas family, who put it into pasture. And then the campus was built in about 1914, our oldest buildings. And so we'll find construction rubble with 6 inches of soil on top of it. And so we're trying to recreate a native prairie, but without good prairie soil.
Okay, and so it's not, it might have been a prairie at one point in time,
Right.
but it was a long time ago. Okay, now, John, tell me, why would people want to do that? What would be the point of restoring a prairie or preserving a prairie?
Well, Basically, we have taken most of the prairie out with agriculture to supply ourselves with food.
Right.
And we're to the point now where, we can't go too much further with food production and traditional manners of improving crops and that. But 10 cc's of a good prairie earth contains approximately 1 million genera of fungi and bacteria.
So
and
it's not just
decomposers.
soil's not just inert material.
The soil is a living environment, and that is what produced the amazing farmland that we have that's pushed our civilization, or the United States, to the point we are now as being the world's breadbasket.
And so one of the questions I was going to ask you is what was Missouri like before it was settled? Before people from Europe came here, what was the land like?
Well, Anna Lucas, who was one of the early pioneers in the area, came with her family after the Madras earthquake. She came in, and the Lucas family were very famous here in St. Louis. She wrote a diary, and she talks about the grasslands, the tall grasses from 7th Street onward.
Now, how tall is a tall grass? Is that like
10 feet,
10?
maybe more? There are tales of people being lost on horseback. Definitely, you could step into a tall grass prairie during Anna's time and very quickly lose sight of the road, lose sight of your friends. It's very tall grasses. This started and was rolling hills on out the St. Charles Rock Road. And then when she went out to settle around the Normandy area, she was struck by big oaks that were scattered in a sea of meadow, was her terms, for the prairie. So she saw it in full bloom with maybe 20, 30 species of wildflowers. Fell in love with it.
So it's not just grasses, it's also wildflowers that grow.
Right, it's wildflowers, it's sunflowers, it's, a good healthy prairie is at least 30, maybe 60 different species of wildflower, 5 or 6 principal species of grasses.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Okay.
the remnants that we run across and preserve, many of them have been inventoried to have upwards of 500 to 800 species of plant.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so it's a huge biodiversity. And so if it's all turned into agriculture, basically, even if we have diverse agriculture, we still have lost the biodiversity of the prairie.
Right.
Yes.
The Lucas family, for example, replaced good Missouri prairie with a single grass species, fescue. And what that did was that saved open land that is now available for students to go in as citizen scientists and recreate prairie, to work with the Missouri Prairie Foundation and other groups to replant the area. It's something that they can get involved with. So on campus, we use prairies and prairie restoration as a way to get non-science students involved in the sciences, to get them involved in our natural world. And even today, we had a crew planting native plants on campus. First time half the class had ever done any that sort of gardening, learning to put plants in the ground, caring for plants. And it really attaches students to campus. When they put in the rain garden, for 3 months afterwards, I got emails on a weekly basis with photo updates on the blooming that was happening all summer long in their rain garden.
Yeah, it sounds like it's something that students could really get involved in. It's very different from sitting inside of a classroom.
Yes, they plan and then carry out prairie restoration plans.
Okay, well, let's take a break because we have some more of the movie that Bill Kreckler made, and it shows some of the work that students are doing. So let's take a look at that right now.
This small building on the south campus of UMSL is fostering a national ecology program in the education of the next generation of ecologists.
Part of CHIRP, or the Campus Honors Environmental Research Program, is we're part of the campus ecology movement. Campus ecology is a national movement of universities and colleges to transform their campuses to be some of the most green institutions in the United States. Several things. One is green architecture, but another is green landscaping. How can we put in ecosystems that are appropriate to the campus and also appropriate to the historical use of the land? 200 years ago, this area was all prairie and savanna, so it would have been tall grasses, it would have been meadow flowers, and in fact, Anna Lucas, who was one of the early pioneers, wrote in her journal about coming out the St. Charles Rock Road and seeing the tall grasses, and they reminded her of the meadows in flower in her native France. Her family settled this area, and so we're returning this to how it would look like if Anna Lucas were alive today and she was seeing this area for the first time. So we're planting big blue stem, which is a typical prairie grass. It'll grow about 6 foot tall. It'll put down roots down about 30 feet. What we're doing for the university then is this will be a wild area that will help support science learning and biology learning here on campus, but it will also help save the university some money. This will be an area that doesn't have to be mowed except for once a year, which is going to save probably $1,000 an acre or so. It's going to help in terms of slowing stormwater that comes off of the streets and parking lots, help slow that water, which will improve water quality in the River des Peres water system, and particularly in Engelholm Stream, which is behind us. So there's many ecosystem values that come about due to prairie restoration. The other thing is simply purely aesthetic. We happen to think that a prairie full of blooming plants in summer will look great, that it will support a large number of bird life.
It takes, about 3 to 5 years to not look like a weed patch. So in order to make that transition a little bit more tolerable for people driving by, we put in some established plants that are already flowering nicely. The other purpose that it serves is I selected many of these plants to have more of an aesthetic kind of value. So they're all flowering plants. They're ones that people may select for personal choices in their landscaping at home. To start seeing native options as a beautiful and very meaningful choice for their home, and to increase biodiversity in the neighborhood area, as well as putting in the right plant in the right place.
Before we started this, basically this basin was just a lot of mowed grass. It was pretty ugly. There was a lot of erosion problems that went right along through here. We realized as an ecology group that something needed to be done about that. So we went in here, we started talking about what we could do. We realized that because there was so much erosion, we could build a rain garden that would retain some of that, keep it out of the streams, and keep this steam bank stabilized right here. Started out by coming down here, measuring the soil. We measured the amount of sunlight it was going to get, and then we went in and did some research on the types of plants we would like to put in. After that, we made some plant lists, tried a few things out. We decided we would go ahead and lay out some maps. We did the measurements for the entire area. We saw how many plants we could fit in based on the budget we had. And my team was really helpful with doing that. They were out here every day on their hands and knees getting dirty. I think that's one of the best things about this program is the hands-on learning that you get. You don't get that in very many classes. What's really great about this rain garden is we only planted up to about not quite halfway. And as you can see, the native plants just kept taking over. So once you give them a chance, they'll come back in. We ended up getting the types of plants we needed. We wanted some taller grasses over here, some wet mesic prairie plants down here that could deal with all of the retaining water it was going to have, because sometimes you can get up to a foot or two of standing water down here. Up here we did, again, some dry plants on this side.
What are they doing in the background?
They are planting a couple of, what is this, thrush? Soft thrushes, yeah. And these are another plant that can handle the really deep waters. There's something that the root system is going to go down real deep, so it's going to kind of help retain this soil instead of making it go directly through into the creek system. Another thing that these deep roots do, which is amazing, is they filter out a lot of the toxins that are going to come from the cars in this parking garage. All the water goes straight through these pipes right here, all the way across and into our local streams. So that's not a good thing. A lot of these plants help with that pollution. Ever since we've stopped doing this, started planting things instead of just mowing things down, people start asking about it. They start seeing the flowers and the butterflies. They see the way that this place is completely changed aesthetically. And that's an amazing thing, because this brings a whole nother part of campus that we can be a part of. This whole brings something else that we can be proud of on our campus. The amount of butterflies and the flowers in here that get in the summer is just amazing. It's a completely different environment.
Welcome back to Green Time. We just saw a movie of Bill Kreckler's about restoring prairie by University of Missouri students. We're talking about native grassland conservation in Missouri, and I have with me Jay Fish, who is with CHIRP. And tell me again what CHIRP stands for.
It's the Campus Honors Environmental Research Program
at University of Missouri St. Louis.
At the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Okay, and we also have John Wingo, who is with the Missouri Prairie Foundation. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, now John, tell me, if someone's a farmer and they hear about Missouri prairie restoration, well, the person might think, well, you're just going to take more farmland, things that areas that could be used for good farmland, and turn it into prairie, which isn't going to accomplish anything. And now, is there any benefits to people as a whole, and to society as well as to farmers?
Well, there is definitely. There's a lot of farm programs out there that have focused on improving water quality on runoffs from farms using prairie buffer strips on stream right-of-way, stream bank riparian corridors, as well as on marginal lands that are not really producing crop. They've lost a lot of their topsoil. Prairie was the original source of the topsoil, and restoring to prairie and fallowing that land for a period of time is what the basis of the Conservation Reserve Program has been, is to try to rebuild those soils.
Now, is it true that farming soil to some extent compacts it, but that if it's prairie, it's going to be more spongy and much more likely to absorb water?
Yeah, a real interesting fact, that's come out of Ohio State is, prairie will put down root systems up to whatever the soil strata will support, but there's many documented cases of a 14-foot deep root structure, and that root structure is so intense there can be 24,000 tons of material in that root system.
Now, how deep did you say that the roots could be?
10 to 15 feet on an average.
They could be 10 to 15 feet. So if you were to stand up, and if I were to stand on your head, then the roots of some prairie grass would go from the top of my head down to below your feet. Is
That's
that correct?
Correct. The majority of the biomass of the prairie is below ground, and it's actually working, mining minerals, and helping bring those to the surface and cycle those into the topsoil.
So do those roots go deeper than most of the crop roots that people
Oh, yes.
And so consequently, if people were to grow prairie grass for a while and then return to farming, the soil would actually be improved by growing the tall prairie grass there.
If implemented correctly.
Oh, yeah, if you do it the right way. Well, let me ask both of y'all: are there any way that other people, businesses, consumers, or people who live in the area can benefit from prairie restoration?
Well, some of the benefits of deep root systems also help us in the urban area. We have a growing concern with stormwater runoff. The rainwater that comes off of roofs and streets and parking lots goes straight into our waterways. That creates pollution problems for our sewer districts. That also can bring a sewer district or a city out of compliance. And the fixes, building more sewer treatment plants, are very expensive. Prairie plants in a rain garden or in a reconstructed prairie act then as large sponges.
Yes.
And so the rainwater can come off of a parking lot into a bioswale or a low spot of prairie plants, the water gets slowed down, absorbed into the soil. Harmful chemicals can get taken in by the plants, and the plants then will tend to neutralize them. And so you'll be returning cleaner water, much cleaner water, back into the urban streams, and at a slower pace, which means that you can save on the sort of stormwater systems, and in the urban area you can have much more natural streams than concrete lined ditches designed to flush the material away.
Yeah, it is amazing to go see some of the rainwater river de Pierre and other places which have concrete sides, which of course can't. Of course, part of the solution there is to stop putting concrete over everything. But the other part of the solution is to make sure that the land that we have, a lot of that can really absorb the water.
Right. So for a business, in some places, for example, businesses are having to absorb the cost of rainwater mitigation. So they're finding it worth their while to put in pervious surface parking lots, that is concrete or macadam, that allows the water to soak in. But very often, those will be tied to prairie restoration to absorb water. The other thing is businesses are becoming more interested, such as Alberici Corporation has found out that a prairie outside their headquarters unit makes business sense because they're not wasting money mowing grass every 10 days. They mow their grass once a year.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you, John, what else lives in a prairie besides vegetation? We've talked pretty exclusively about vegetation.
Well, basically the base of the food plant, the pyramid, is the decomposers, but then above the decomposers you have your herbivores.
Okay.
You know, you have quite a few small mammals that are herbivores that are in there, as well as you have the insect population, which is really the most diverse. A lot of our native pollinators, before we brought in European honeybees, are dependent on prairie, as well as a lot of our butterflies and grassland birds.
So the biodiversity of Missouri, it's not just vegetation based, it's also animal based.
Correct.
And it's really important to have that animal base there.
That's right. The prairie plants are host to a lot of the insect species that without them, they're exclusive to those hosts.
Okay. Now, what about some of the advantages of the deep soil? We talked about roots going really far down. What are some of the advantages to a deep soil bed like that?
Well, number one, you're not introducing any chemical into the environment by managing for monoculture on that.
Right.
You're also building that soil tilth. A study in University of Northern Iowa revealed that an acre of established prairie can take 9 inches of rainfall without runoff.
And that's huge. But that's, you know, I didn't realize the magnitude of that. That would be like several of the worst storms that we have in St. Louis could be absorbed by that prairie.
Plus, rolling back to the use in agriculture, there's been studies at University of Missouri Columbia now where they're real interested in soil organic carbon, and it's kind of like with the Amazon dark soils, the terra pretas, where they'd actually put charcoal in them. The fire regime with prairies over the past 10,000 years built that soil organic carbon, so that's one of the key focus areas now, is how to build that back, but that massive root system regenerates approximately a third every year.
Okay, so we're just about out of time, so I want to thank you, Jay Fish. I want to thank John Wingo. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this episode of Green Time, and I hope that you've learned about the strong importance of preserving prairies in Missouri, and I hope you tune in to Green Time next week.